from memory.
I-
In accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law relating to the 2020 novel coronavirus outbreak emergency, the April 6th, 2021 meeting of the Falmouth Planning Board shall be physically closed to the public to avoid group congregation. Alternative public access to this meeting shall be provided in the following manner. 1, the meeting will be televised via Falmouth Community Television. 2, real-time public comment can be addressed to the planning board utilizing the Zoom virtual meeting software for remote access. This application will allow users to view the meeting and send a comment or question to the chair via the chat function. Submitted text comments will be read into the record at the appropriate points in the meeting. Login instruction. Instructions for the meeting link. This specific can be found in the following web address: www.falmouthma.gov/planning. 2, please plan on 10 to 15 minutes preparation time to log in, though it may be less if you've previously used Zoom on the device you will use to access the meeting. 3, additional public comments may be sent in advance of the meeting to planning@falmouth.gov at least 5 hours prior to the beginning of the meeting. Documents and audio or video files may also be submitted via email. Submitted email comments and documents will be made a part of the meeting record and may be read into the record, summarized, or displayed during the meeting at the discretion of the chair. 4, applicants, their representatives, and individuals with enforcement matters before the planning board may appear remotely and are not required to be physically present. Applicants, their representatives, and individuals with enforcement matters before the planning board may contact the planning department to arrange an alternative means of real-time participation if unable to use the Zoom virtual meeting software. Documentary exhibits and/or visual presentations
I don't miss that coffee.
in advance of the meeting to planning@falmouthma.gov. So that's the remote public access.
Thank you, Paul. And then the minutes of March 16th, your recommendation?
Minutes of March 16, a joint meeting of the planning board and the select board. They just came in this afternoon. I've reviewed them, but I haven't heard any comments from other members of the board. Are there comments coming in?
I read them and I didn't have any comment.
I have not read them. So maybe we ought to just hang on to them till the next meeting, or
Yeah, I had no comments. There was one minor correction that I put in there, but it didn't affect anything in the meeting minutes. If you prefer, Madam Chair, we can wait till next week.
no, if both you and Bob are okay with it, we can approve if you like. How does the rest of the board feel who's present?
Yeah, there was nothing there that was controversial. in my mind.
Jim?
Mayor, we gotta let Mary Harris in. It's really Charlotte using Mary's computer.
So
Let her
whoever
in.
wants to elevate
Elevate
her,
her.
please elevate her to join our meeting.
There she is.
Okay,
Okay, I recommend we approve the minutes of March 16th, the joint meeting of the select board. That's
okay,
correct.
is there a second to that?
Second,
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Are there any further comments? All in favor, please, a show of hands. Okay, so 6 out of the 6 who are present. Thank you. Next on the agenda is public discussion. The applicant, Joseph and Kathleen Murphy, site plan review application to permit an accessory apartment above the attached garage at 59 Worcester Court. And we have a
excuse me,
packet of.
Madam Chairman.
Yes, Jim.
I believe there's a public comment letter that was submitted for this time.
On this one, I don't have it if there is.
No, just in general. I thought I did.
Yeah, but we don't get to that. Oh, we get to that under communication under,
We don't read at the beginning?
no.
Okay, I thought we used to run it at the public comment at the
No,
beginning.
that's under general
Fine.
correspondence, Jim.
All right.
So is there anybody here to represent the Murphys?
Mr. Murphy was here a while ago.
You're
I saw
elevating Mr. Murphy and Mr. Clower.
Okay, so they're being elevated now?
That's correct.
Okay. And Pam has just joined us. Hi, Michaela.
Yeah, and Pat, can you
Yes.
see, can you see me now?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, thank
No
you.
problem.
I've never used an iPad like this before, so I wasn't sure. Sorry.
Works great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, I kind of like it preferable because you're seeming closer
Closer.
than when you're using your computer.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That does look closer.
Yeah.
That has its good points and bad points.
Okay. So I see Kevin is here and Mr. Murphy is here. Kevin, do you want to lead off then, please?
Sure. Before I start, can we also just elevate Mike Borselli in case any questions come up relative to engineering?
Of course, I didn't realize he was here. I don't know if Justin heard that request to elevate Mike Borselli.
Pretty sharp for the most part.
There we go.
There he is.
Thank you, Justin. Sharp all the time, I should say.
For the record, my name is Kevin Clower. I'm an attorney with Ahmet Clower Law Firm here in Falmouth, and I represent the applicants, Joseph and Kathleen Murphy, as they are the owners of 59 Worcester Court. They are applying for site plan review for an accessory apartment within a single family dwelling. This property, 59 Worcester Court, is located in the heart of Falmouth Heights, just north of Jericho Path. It's on a fairly large lot for the area. It's 15,400 square feet. It's zoned residential C, and currently there's a single family dwelling with 5 bedrooms. The applicants are seeking to raise and rebuild that dwelling, the primary portion of which will have 4 bedrooms, as well as an accessory dwelling above the garage, which will have 1 bedroom, and that is an attached garage. As such, they are seeking site plan review approval for that accessory dwelling in the space above the garage under 240-23I. The proposed apartment has, I believe, all the necessary features. There's necessary egress and ingress. It's only 642 square feet, which is 29.7% of the primary residence, which is just over 2,100 square feet. The primary home will be owner occupied 7 months out of the year. And I believe it meets all the other requirements that you typically look for. The applicant had previously obtained a driveway permit and had submitted sediment and erosion control plan to engineering, because I know there was a comment about that from the engineering report. And I know that a question popped up today relative to whether that was going to be paved, and the intent is that it be paved. I would just note that, the applicant is happy to put dry wells around the property, and otherwise we're going to have a smaller driveway than currently exists. Other than that, this is my understanding that this is almost precisely what was intended for accessory apartments. I believe it meets all the requirements of the accessory apartment bylaw, and I would ask that the board approve the site plan review, but I'd be happy to address any questions that you might have.
Does anybody have any questions from the board? Paul?
I do have a question. Is this an entirely new building?
Yep, the
Raise and
existing,
reconstruct.
the existing house is coming down and a new house is being constructed.
Because I found the modular building drawings that submitted, they're a little confusing, because they show windows and doors and doesn't seem to make a lot of sense.
Yeah, they're apparently the modular plans actually need to be reviewed and approved by the state. So these plans have been reviewed and approved, but I thought that they weren't the easiest things to follow. I don't disagree.
I think one of the problems I was having is scratching my head until I started reading the microscopic print on there is that it's the builder's responsibility to do this, to do that, to do the other thing. So you see a door if you want to jump down 20 feet. You do not see the stairwell going down that must be built.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how the board feels about that. Taking it on faith that it's going to be built.
Well, we're not going to be able to get a building permit if we have a door to empty air. I don't think.
No, I know that, but So there's more work that has to be done on these plans, I think, to show that, I believe. Jim?
Well, I believe what we're doing here tonight is a site plan review.
Mm-hmm.
And we're requiring the building department to deal with the code issues.
Oh, I know. Just pointing this out. And Kevin's aware of that. Bob?
I don't have the engineering report in front of me right now, but I believe I went through and the comments were addressed, comment addressed. But then at the very end, there was something, and I can't remember what that was, whether it was the runoff from the driveway that was still at an issue that wasn't addressed.
Yes, you're right, Bob.
Okay, so that's got to be contained on site, and I'm just wondering if that's been updated.
Yeah, it was a new comment under there. If
Yeah,
you'd like,
there's a
I can
new
read
letter
it.
that came out late this afternoon from engineering.
Yeah.
I can
So
speak to
I'd
that.
be happy to read it in case some members of the board haven't seen it. Has anybody else not seen the new comments? Okay, it looks like everybody has seen them. So that has to be addressed. Mike?
If it's appropriate, I could speak to it.
Of course.
And if I could, Madam Chairman, could I share my screen briefly?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm sharing my screen showing the site plan. And you can see on the site plan, the existing house is superimposed in a lighter black color for reference. And you can see the edge of the driveway here. It was much further to the south. When the new house is built, the driveway is going to shift to the north. And it's going to effectively be the same size, and the current drainage patterns are going to remain the same. I also took some, if you didn't have an opportunity to go by the property, I have these photos. So you can see here's the existing driveway. This driveway is going to get shifted probably to about this side of that pickup truck and then move this way. And you can see it's very flat. In fact, the water sort of, in a rainstorm, like sort of puddles right here. There's another picture from the other direction, standing on the driveway looking out at Worcester Court. You can see there's a berm across here. This edge of driveway will end up moving over to about right here, and then this edge will move over to here. So the current situation is such that there's no roof runoff contained in dry wells, and there's no drainage for the existing driveway, and it doesn't seem to be an issue whatsoever. In fact, I did a visual inventory all along Worcester Court, and all the driveways seem to be flat and gently pitched to Worcester Court. So I don't know that there's any issues with drainage and impacts on Worcester Court. In fact, if we put in the dry wells, we're going to reduce runoff potential. So that being said, the driveway is proposed to be paved, and I think the dry wells for the house mitigate the runoff, and that should satisfy the planning board. And
Okay.
I'll stop sharing.
Thank you, Mike. Paul?
Yeah. I guess my initial confusion was the public discussion announcement was to permit an accessory apartment above the attached garage. And I assumed when I read that, that was just going to be something added to the top of the building. If you look further in drawings, you're going to tear down this building, build an entirely new building. Is that correct?
Mhm.
It says
Raise and reconstruct.
So they're going to tear it down. So it's really not the way it was advertised. And
It does say raise and
modular
reconstruct.
drawings, they're very confusing until you get to the ones at the end that show specific information. And I think that information is pretty reasonable. But that's up to the building department to review that part of it.
Okay, part of our site plan review is we are supposed to be seeing some landscaping, and there's no indication as to what plantings. I know along there's not extensive, but there's no indication on the plan as to what might be planted with the new building. So we do need to have that for site plan review. And Kevin, you're familiar with what we're looking for.
Sure, I haven't typically submitted a landscape plan for an accessory apartment site plan review. I think the idea would be that the landscaping be maintained in effectively the same condition that it is now. It'll be improved, of course, but I don't believe that there's a landscape plan like we might see with a larger development.
I understand. So, Charlotte?
It looks to me as if the concerns that we may have are being covered by, in the conditions, there are the 4 conditions that always appear with these auxiliary apartments, but there's an additional couple that address the concerns with the driveway and the engineering concerns. So I'd be inclined to approve this, to ask for a positive recommendation coming back at our next meeting.
Bob?
Could we see the elevation? Because we also need to consider if this fits in with the neighborhood too. That's part of our site plan review. So I haven't seen any elevations.
I'd be
Oh,
happy to
they're in
share.
the packet. They're-
I didn't get a packet. It must have
Yeah.
got delivered to the Hatchville address and not
Oh,
coupon.
Sure.
So
Well, I'd be happy to share my screen just for,
Fine.
yeah, that'd be good.
this is the proposed elevation, which, having done a lot of work on Worcester Court, I think very much is in line with some of the nearby properties. The nearest abutter to the south is in the middle of was also recently torn down and is being rebuilt to a very significant building. Beautifully done, but very significant. And, I think that this is, though smaller in scope, certainly not out of character.
Okay. Thank you.
Paul?
Yeah, as far as the neighborhood goes, there's a very large building being constructed right next to that. It's very large, high fence and so forth, so, that's not the same as in the neighborhood there, but so it's a little hard to object to this one when that one was approved.
Tom?
If I can just interject here, I think the planning board's site plan review for accessory housing unit has been sort of focused on, does this look like a single family residence when it's done? Does it look like two structures? Does it look like one? So typically, if we have something that looks like a single family structure, this is an attached accessory unit with a unit over top. We like to see the elevations, but that's typically what we've been looking at. Does it look like a single family residence when it's done?
Charlotte?
It looks like a single family residence. It seems to answer everything we've put into the bylaw. It's true that it's larger than the house immediately to the south of it that showed up in that photograph. But if you're at all familiar with Worcester Court, they're a mix of 2-story and sort of 1.5-story capes. So it's going to be a little bit bigger, taller, but it's going to fit in.
Pam,
I'm assuming it won't be.
Pam, were you raising your hand? You're muted, Pam.
Then you can't hear me.
That's right.
So, I drive down Worcester Court a lot, and I suspect what's happening is there's a lot of what we might call mansionizing of lots of those homes that were small, but they have enough land, and they're just, tearing them down and rebuilding them. And so I think it's going to be a very mixed looking area where it had been traditionally just, smaller homes. But I agree with Charlotte that there's nothing that should stop us from moving ahead with this.
Okay, so Michaela, it looks like all the board is agreed that the conditions that you put in here in the staff report would satisfactorily hit everything we need to say, and that they would be looking for a decision at our next meeting. Okay?
Wonderful.
Just to clarify, Pat, is the next meeting
Yes.
on the 20th? I wasn't sure because of town meeting.
Hang on a minute.
April 27th.
It's on the 27th.
Okay.
We did that because town meeting on the 12th. So, okay. So everybody's happy with that. We'll see a decision for it on the 27th. Okay, thank you. And thank you, Mr. Murphy, for being here, for being present tonight.
I wish some of the other bigger houses were doing this, including an accessory along with it.
Yeah,
I agree.
okay. So further on the agenda, we have applicant Buzzards Bay Development LLC site plan review modification application to construct multifamily dwellings adding over 1,000 square feet of gross floor area at 40 Shore Street. And we have, again, Kevin to represent.
And if I could ask that we elevate Matt Costa, please.
Of course.
And I know that Mike Cialino is also here. I'm not sure we need to elevate Mike just yet in case some questions come up that he might be able to have to address.
Okay.
So again, for the record, my name is Kevin
Matt.
Clower. And I represent the applicant, Buzzards Bay Development LLC. They're the owner of 40 Shore Street. This site has what I'll call a long and sordid history of permitting. We went through a rather rigorous permitting for a proposed 40B development at this site. And at the end of the day, we felt that the conditions that were placed on the project simply made it a non-starter. It just wouldn't have been financially feasible to continue with that plan. So the applicant took a step back and looked at alternatives. So we are here tonight applying for site plan review as we are adding more than 1,000 square feet. For some background, 40 Shore Street is a large lot on the easterly side of Shore Street near Maine. It is oversized for the area. It's a 48,900 square feet. It's 1.12 acres. And it's general residence zoning, not in a coastal pond overlay or a water resource protection district. Currently, there is a 2-story single-family house located at the very front of the lot. Within the general residence district, 24026C allows for by right multifamily use of no more than 3 units, provided that at least one is affordable as defined. Multifamily use is specifically defined as any combination of dwellings on a single lot resulting in 3 or more units. So we're here tonight seeking to renovate the existing dwelling. That dwelling will be restricted as affordable, and to construct 2 new units on the site, both of which will be market rate. This has been before the Historical Commission already and approved. Though this proposal is by right, a site plan review is required as we are adding more than 1,000 square feet of gross floor area. I believe that generally speaking, the plans for both the site and the buildings are relatively self-explanatory. We have had some discussion with staff relative to the idea that the driveway width must be 24 feet wide. Staff was citing to 240-108.1. However, I believe that the reference regulation applies to size and dimensioning of parking stalls and aisles. I don't believe it's applicable to residential driveways. It hasn't been applied that way in the past. For context, the plans for the Nautilus development, which have been thoroughly vetted by this board, show driveways that are 20 feet wide. However, the parking stall areas of those plans are 24 feet wide. A driveway width of 24 feet wide in this on this site would result in an area paved that's larger than the actually paved width of Shore Street. However, in response to staff comments, the applicant did relocate the driveway and widen it to 20 feet wide. Beyond that, I, along with Mr. Costa, would be glad to address any questions that the board may have.
Driveway's 18 feet wide.
18. Right.
That's what I thought it was. Thanks, Matt. Jim?
I just had a question. I did a review using Falmouth GIS of Shore Street, and I couldn't find any driveways that are 24 feet wide.
Right.
I just thought it's really too much for the neighborhood. It's an historic neighborhood. I just didn't understand where that was coming from. And to refer to the parking grid is more like a commercial application that you do for an office building, or not a residential home where the cars are going to be in garages. I think there was a disconnect in that thought process in my mind.
Well, the way our bylaw reads, you could say that it was required, and that's
You could
why.
say.
That's why Tom was looking at maybe putting the parking
could
requirements
also
in
waive
the
it.
design review. Yeah. So, are there any other questions on this or comments on it?
Comment.
Paul?
Yeah, I thought the drawings by Cape and Islands Engineering were very well done, Mr. Costa.
Yeah. Tom, you had a comment or a question? You're muted, Tom. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. So one of the other things that we talked about with Kevin and with I think it was Raul with Cape and Islands, in addition to the driveway, was about the provision for requiring that third unit to be affordable. And to be affordable, it has to, under the definition, comply with 760 CMR 56, which is essentially, it's got to be eligible to be on the subsidized housing inventory as a friendly 40B, as a local 40B. And that is a particularly involved process. And it always, and I always feel for someone who has to do this, particularly if they have one unit. If you're doing a 40B and you've got 10 units, if you're doing a larger development, so going through the process of getting something on the subsidized housing inventory is, it takes a lot of legwork, it takes a lot of lead time, and it's important, as our bylaw points out, that it qualifies for that. So one of the things that we had talked about is how do we ensure that that happens in a timely manner? We've heard on a pretty regular basis that affordable housing is a money-losing proposition for the developer. That's why we see 40Bs when the market is hot, because the market rate for those market rate houses is enough to subsidize the cost of the affordable unit. When the market's down, we don't see quite so much of that. So I just want to make sure that we've got some mechanism to make sure that the affordable unit that's required doesn't languish out into the future at some point. Because like I said, it is a bit of a grind to get that done, particularly if you've got one unit. What I had suggested in the conversations we had with council yesterday is perhaps that it might be that you can't get the CO on the second market rate unit until the affordable unit is gone through the lottery process and essentially met with the requirements of 760 CMR 56. In the town of Kingston, where we are not at, where they had an inclusionary housing bylaw, they allowed folks, an inclusionary housing bylaws, if you build X number of units, 10% of those are affordable. And it also allowed a provision to create units off-site, where you didn't have to put all of the affordable unit in your market rate development. You could put it off-site. And in those instances, the planning board required that affordable unit that might be off-site, where somebody bought a house and rehabbed it, to make sure that the burden of an older house and lesser insulation and older appliances or an older furnace didn't fall on that owner or occupant of the affordable dwelling unit. We don't have a stipulation like that to ensure that the house that's being, that's going to be the affordable unit, which is the existing dwelling, has all those things in place. But at bare minimum, I'd like to make sure that we have a some surety, some leverage in place to make sure that that affordable unit doesn't languish into the future. Because we don't want a circumstance where someone builds two houses and then comes to the building commissioner with hat in hand and says, I've got a closing tomorrow and I need to sell this house, but the affordable unit still hasn't made much progress on it. So that's my concern, because we haven't done very many of these that your comfort level with that, and just to express my concern about the fact that housing is tough, affordable housing is tough, and I just don't want this to be one of those things that languish out there, because it's frankly not a big money maker for the developer to create affordable units. That's my comment.
Then I'm going to throw this at you, Tom, because I understand the concern. I would have a concern of that too, but this is site plan review. And again, I get criticized that we are looking at things, and rightfully so, I get criticized, that are not under site plan review. And trying to make sure that the units are built as it's been presented to us. I don't know how we can assure that.
Well, I guess if the site plan says there are two market rate units and one affordable unit, is the site plan not in compliance until there is an affordable unit?
I would say so, because it's got to be built as it's presented to us. So how do we assure that in any decision we make?
My suggestion was, and it's like I said, because it was that to ensure that the last unit doesn't get a CO until there's at least a lottery and that building is eligible to be placed on the subsidized housing inventory.
John?
Tom said he had a discussion with the applicant regarding this matter. What does the applicant say?
Sure. Quite honestly, I did say to Mr. Bott yesterday, I think it is kind of outside of the site plan review purview. I think that, it is a by right matter. And if we amended this plan to be a duplex being built instead of the 3 single family homes, it wouldn't be a question before the planning board. That said, we have to comply with the requirements of the bylaw. We don't have a significant objection to what he suggested. I just think it's outside of the purview of the planning board.
Hey, Pat.
Yeah,
Can you
Jim.
not see me?
I can see you.
Okay, I've been trying to get your attention for a while.
I'm sorry, but I didn't see that. Okay.
Okay. From when
So-
Tom first started talking, I think this is being done under our existing bylaw that allows in a general residential for 3 units, it's one of them affordable, and it's not a 40B. And I think to convert it as a 40B and assigning those things just really confuses the issue. I believe that the bylaw does require for the first one to be sold to a affordable unit before the other 2. At least when I built under this bylaw, that's what was required. I'm very familiar with it. And I want to make it clear, this is not a 40B. Tom referenced it as a 40B 3 or 4 times. And I think that's really
Yeah.
confusing.
Yeah, it's not.
Can I
Tom?
straighten that out? So 760 CMR 56 is chapter 40B. That's the regulation that goes with 40B. In order for a unit to be on the subsidized housing inventory, it has to comply with all the requirements of 760 CMR 56, shorthand 40B. That's the stipulation that I made, is it has to be on the subsidized housing inventory. And to do that, you create a local action unit.
But
Make sure-
40Bs go to the ZBA, not us. It's really confusing to say that.
Well, that's why I started saying 760 CMR 56, so you wouldn't be confused with 40B. But
you
that's-
said 40B like 4 times.
That's the requirement.
So although this is
Isn't
not,
this a by right use?
yeah,
Okay,
so. Charlotte?
I'd just like to say that the reason that it's slow about the subsidized housing inventory is not something that the applicant and all those people assisting him have any control over. Why aren't we assuming it's a by right thing, that they're going to make their best efforts to carry through on the plan that we're preparing to approve? I don't know why we wouldn't make that presumption, or if we're not making that presumption, why we wouldn't add that as a condition. Also, Pat,
Yeah.
deal with that, and then I have something else I want to ask you.
Okay, the thing that we would have to say on this is that one of the units would be affordable, I believe, in perpetuity, and that would be a necessity to get the 3 units.
I think it's
So-
perfectly reasonable to say that as a condition that one of the units is affordable as defined, and Mr. Bott is correct. There's actually a definition of affordable dwelling unit within our bylaw, which does reference 760 CMR 56. That is even if it's a finding or a condition that we're applying under that, which is a requirement of what we're applying under. As I've said, I don't have any significant objection to what Mr. Bott has suggested. I just think that as a condition, it's a little outside of the planning board's purview, but it's like agreeing that we're going to do what we have to do anyways. It's like when we have some of these deed restrictions that say, we won't use this illegally as an accessory apartment until such time as it's permitted as an accessory apartment. I mean, we're agreeing that we're going to do what we're required to do.
So you're not objecting to having it then, I'm understanding, Kevin, in our findings or our conditions?
No, I don't have any significant objection to it because we can't have 3 units without having the affordable unit anyways. I just don't know that as a condition it's appropriate for the planning board, but I'm
Exactly.
certainly not going to draw my line in the sand over it.
Okay,
Pat,
Charlotte, yes.
I kind of object to it. It's not necessary. These are not well-known lawbreakers that we're dealing with. They aren't, and they're all local. I mean, it's in the law. Everything they've done so far, they've made a real effort to make sure that it fits all the requirements. We don't need to write all those provisions or selected ones into our finding on this. And I wouldn't want to see that practice started. It's not a good practice.
See, I rather agree with you, Charlotte, because it's outside of our purview on site plan review. And it is described, they have to come back to us if anything changes on it. So I'm satisfied. I like what they've done. Charlotte, you wanted to say something additionally?
I'm sorry, I thought you were finished.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, because this is something different. Yes, so we're in agreement, you and I, and apparently Kevin, and I hope others. My question now deals with, in front of me, this is probably just my own confusion.
Okay.
I have a drawing that shows a 24-foot gargantuan driveway and a drawing that shows one that is smaller. Which one is the later? Which one are we actually approving?
The 18-foot wide driveway, the smaller driveway.
Thank you.
It came in another, it was dated April 1st. The drawing, okay?
Thank you.
That makes a whole lot more sense.
Yes, it does. Got confused because we have two.
Yeah. All right. Are there any other further comments? Pamela?
Yeah, I just want to ask Kevin, will all of the finishes and the interiors, as far as you know, be similar to the market rate in the affordable unit?
I mean, I think the answer is yes. I think that, you know, the developer here has established a reputation as a pretty solid builder, and I don't think you'd want to jeopardize that. The idea, of course, is that, you know, although this is not a 40B, the idea is that you should look at development and not say that's the one that stands out. And I think that's true of any development. So, you know, it wouldn't behoove him from a marketing standpoint of selling the other units to have a unit at the very front of this development that's subpar. Because he's not going to be able to market those the way he the rear units the way he might want if he has effectively an eyesore at the front. So yeah, I mean, I think the development's going to be really tastefully done. I think you've seen the plans. I think the plans are really well done. I think that the Historical Commission has approved it. As to the interior finishes, there will likely be some differences, but it's not going to be. That's the difference between someone designing a house the way they might choose during the build process versus something that's built on spec.
Kevin, can I ask you another question? Is there an HOA with this?
There's going to have to be some commonalities, and there'll be some common agreement because you have a shared driveway. There'll probably be a shared agreement as to paving and maintenance and snow removal. I'm not sure it'll rise to the level of an HOA, but there will be something on record establishing, the shared use.
Okay, and I'm hoping that it will be reduced for the affordable unit.
That strikes me as perfectly reasonable.
Yeah, I'm going back to when we saw the original plan. I liked the whole idea that this very much older home was planned to be preserved. We like to see that in Falmouth as part of the charm in this community, that we have the older buildings being preserved. So I very much like that part of it. I'm assuming it will be stripped down to the studs, insulated and all that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But you're kind of bad to assume things, but I would assume that, again, that would be done.
That's not our purview anyway, so.
I know it's not. See, you caught me. Okay, so we would want a decision on the 27th, I believe. Is everybody in favor of that?
Yes.
Yes.
To approve, to make it absolutely clear. Okay. Thank you.
Could I just ask a clarifying comment? Because I wasn't
Michaela.
sure, I'm sorry. So are we, and I hate to bring up this topic, but are we including the condition regarding, a certificate of occupancy for the other two units Or are we putting that in the findings, or are we striking that all together? I just want to be clear.
It's not in our purview as to what we're looking at.
Okay.
Site plan review, so we're striking it all together. Jim?
When I built these, that was a requirement of the building permit. It wasn't even
Right.
part of our subject. The building inspector said I had to do that.
I will not include that then.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much. We appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you, Kevin.
Okay. Dave Viera, although Peter Johnson Staub had asked us to indicate by a vote that we were all right with moving our zoning articles to the June special meeting because they wanted to truncate the April 12th to only the necessary financial articles. And so we did, oh, I've got a nasty tick climbing on me. Excuse me. Excuse me, I gotta smush this baby.
Kill it, Pat.
I'm trying to. It doesn't like being killed. This is a baby one. So you have to excuse me while I kill it. There, I
Get
did.
it?
Okay,
Good.
yes, thank you for
Like-
your,
Like watching a Hitchcock movie.
oh geez. Well, the last thing I wanted to be done is have this little thing latch on. So what they're asking, Dave Viera asked us, because it was not on our agenda, and in case anybody questioned it, that he wanted us to reaffirm our vote of that meeting. And so we need to take a vote tonight to reaffirm our, that we are fine with moving this to June, to moving all the zoning articles to June, the special town meeting.
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved,
Second,
moved and seconded. Please, may I have a show of hands? All in favor? Okay, 7 out of 7. Thank you.
I'm not voting. I just had a question.
What?
So I just wanted to make sure that that motion that I thought I heard you say was to assent to take up all the zoning articles at a special town meeting anticipated to be June 2021 or later.
I didn't say or later, but I just said in June.
That was our vote last time.
Okay. Whatever it was, we reaffirmed it tonight.
I just wanted to make sure we were clear on that. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. We've been asked now for comments on to the ZBA for the Rosewood 40B. And you've gotten the ZBA discussion in your packet. Any comments on this? How do you want to handle it as far as our comments to the ZBA? It seemed that from the minutes that we got from the ZBA meeting, they were still awaiting further definition that they didn't have to even make a decision.
Would you like me to bring up the plan on the screen?
Sure,
Yes.
why not?
So I think what you see before you is a layer of lots with a sort of yellowish stripe and a bluish stripe on them.
Yeah.
So the yellow that you see here from the turnaround, this is the subdivision road. And on top of that, in the blue is the existing Percival Road. So Percival Road, much like Lewis Neck Road, is a private, well, not like Lewis Neck, but it has some of the same issues that Lewis Neck has, where the way and where those improvements are at are on someone else's property. And so in order for the developer to do what they initially had proposed to improve Percival Road with a 22-foot right-of-way, paving and drainage, they can't do that because they don't have permission to work on Percival. So they have added on entirely on their property this new road that goes the length of those 13 lots and ends at a dead end parallel to Percival. So as you follow the lines down in yellow and follow the lines down in blue, we get to this spot where things are green. right here, where Percival, it sort of intersects, it sort of crosses with this new 40B road. So I'm not exactly sure how that works in practice, where you're going to take that same turn off of Trotting Park Road and sort of keep to the right to go to the development and to the left on Percival. This is going to be sort of interesting right at that point right there. And with that, I'm just going to drop the screen because that was, I think, this significant change to the development over what had been looked at before. So rather than having a throughway that goes all the way out to Sandwich Road, the development now is going to be a dead end that is going to be next to the road.
Okay, and I do not remember entirely our original comments to the ZBA. I know they were essentially, it's a dead end because the road is so narrow down at the end and so treacherous to try to traverse. It's essentially a huge, long dead end. And I do believe we said something about there's some dispute about the ownership of how they wanted to put the road in. And the road itself was very narrow. I can't remember all the other things but in essence, we said, no, it didn't comport with anything that our town was looking at for affordable housing too. As to location, it's way out. It's not walkable. There were no sidewalks proposed initially. Have I missed anything that anybody remembers? Michaela?
Pat, I have the letter up in front of me. I can kind of go through some of the paragraph
Okay,
points
thank
if you'd
you.
like, just briefly.
Thank you.
So yes, you guys had thought the proposed number of lots was too dense and would result in too many trees needing to be cut down for the area. That the entrance on either end of the road would still be functionally a one lane and therefore would present a safety issue. Due to the roadway length with no lighting, the board wanted to see lighting added to the roadway for safety measures. That basically the road is essentially still a one-way street. It ends in a very narrow manner, as you said, and the access is poor. Cars would be unable to pass by each other. The board felt that if there was going to be a connection, if at all, through Harness Drive, then it should be an emergency-only access point. And lastly, the board felt that the conditions for the location did not match the HPP in regards to serviceability, transportation, and location, and that it was too far from major amenities that the town was looking for.
Okay, so now you know our original advice to the ZBA. Thank you, Michaela. I'm glad you had that in front of you. Jim?
Wasn't there a reference to the local comprehensive plan as well as the HPP? Not being compliant, or are we just forgetting about the local comprehensive plan and now just only referring to the HPP?
I don't remember.
Okay.
In this case,
I think a lot of,
go ahead, Jim, or Bob.
I think a lot of the points that were raised were from the LCP. We just didn't name the LCP. Because when we were talking about accessibility to amenities and things like that, that's all part of what's in the LCP. I just don't think we listed it as the LCP, but we pulled things from it.
Yeah, we didn't call it out.
Right.
Okay, Pam?
So I'm a little confused. There's something on this plan where it looks like there's some sort of a roundabout. I can't see well enough to see what the lot numbers are, but if you're looking at the plan to the left, you've got midway and then halfway.
Give me a second, I'll
Yeah.
bring it right back up for you.
Okay, thank you. So maybe it's 5 and 6 on the left.
So 5 and 6 are here on the left.
Right, and what is that strange looking circular? Yes,
That's a topography line. That's existing topography. That's a hill.
A
thank
little
you.
hill there, okay. Paul?
When we were out there a couple of times, but one time we were out there, I think the poles go along the existing roadway, don't they? Aren't the utilities on that road?
Along the existing road, yeah.
On the existing road. So what we're doing here is putting a whole new road and kind of destroying that entire area.
Aesthetically, yeah. Charlotte?
When I looked at it and finally understood it, I thought, oh, isn't that clever? You don't like the road? We're going to put in a completely new one. And they did solve one problem of the egress being too narrow, but they didn't solve the two primary problems. It's a dead end. It's too long for a dead end. We don't allow dead ends that are that long. It doesn't allow for any turnaround at the dead end. People are going to have to reverse into other people's driveways. And it's too dense for the area. That this is going to strip the area of vegetation for the houses. And now, in order to have two streets.
It's going to do even more stripping of the land. Tom? And then John.
There is actually a hammerhead turnaround at the end of the proposed 40B street between lots 14 and 15.
Is that what that is?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it looked like a driveway going into a house.
Well,
It
So
does
that's-
look like that.
So this is the
Oh.
turnaround.
Oh,
That's the T
It's-
turnaround. So here,
okay, I see it now.
this is a driveway that takes you to 16. You'll come down this T turnaround. There's a driveway here to lot 15, a driveway to lot 14. But that is the hammerhead turnaround for fire equipment. And this
Right.
is the utility easement here that lines up with Harnish Drive that had been previously discussed as a potential emergency access.
Tom, what is likely to happen with that other road,
Which other road, ma'am?
the Blue Road?
Percival.
It will be bumpy Percival Road as it always has been. There will be no changes on Percival Road. The developer doesn't own it. The property owners who do own it don't want anything changed because they like it the way that it is.
John?
According to what they gave us, the applicant is either going to call this a road, and if there's a concern about it being longer than 500 feet as a dead end, they're going to call it a common driveway. And it is completely on the applicant's property, 100%.
Can you have a comment?
I think it's very creative. I think we need affordable housing in this town. There's always going to be too many trees cut down. There's always going to be not the right location. And I said the first time around, I support this wholeheartedly.
Okay, and in my years on the board, we've always had vigorous discussions as to how many homes can be on a common driveway. I think the max we've allowed is 3. Tom?
I just wanted to point out under 40B is that our local regulations have no sway. It's what the state requires. So none of our local regulations have no effect in a 40B. Length of road, turnaround, things like that.
Okay, then the question I'm going to throw out to all of you, with Michaela having very kindly read our original letter, does anybody on the board, there are 2 things we can do. We can reaffirm our original letter to the ZBA, or we can create another letter to the ZBA. What would the board like to do?
Type
Thank
it
you.
all bold, caps.
Jim?
I have a question. Of the people that are on part of this 40B, they will not be able to use Percival Road at all. They will not be able to use the exit out to Sandwich Road. They'll be forced there. So there'll be like a dividing line between these 2 different roads or driveways, or private road and driveway. I'd have to comment that this is the biggest mess I've ever seen on access. And instead of getting better, we've made it worse.
Yeah.
But if we have to approve it, because that's what the state says, we should really ask them to take a hard look at what they're making us do here. I mean, this could have been a court, and Green Street, if they worked together on this thing and made it nice, and now it's like, you're on that side, I'm on this side, you can't drive here. You can't go out that road. Ah, man,
John,
what a mess.
I don't think we're approving or disapproving anything. I think we're making a referral to the zoning board of appeals.
that is
I think
correct.
you're right. You're right.
That's
That
correct.
is true. that is
Tom,
true.
you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I think that the comment that that Jim was working on was that the entranceway is problematic with the existence of the existing Percival Road and the proposed new roadway to access the lots. And that attention should be paid at that entrance to make sure that you don't have conflicting turning motions and that there's no confusion amongst people entering and leaving the site.
So that would need to be added to our referral to the ZBA. John?
Isn't Percival Road at Trotting Park Road? I haven't been there for quite a while, but isn't it a completely rutted, miserable dirt road?
Yes.
And I can't see how, if this applicant builds what he is planning to build, he couldn't do anything but improve that entrance. And whether we like it or don't like it, it can't be any worse than what people are suffering through right now. And they may like to suffer through it, but we're the planning board. We're supposed to improve situations.
But Percival Road's staying there and it's gonna be doing the same
Yeah.
thing. It's not going away.
But the point is that it appears that they blend together for maybe a few feet. And there seems to be an objection to that.
Tell you,
Not for me. My objection is we are creating two parallel roads where one neighborhood has to go out in and out one way and the other neighborhood has to go in out the other way.
We're not creating anything.
No, it's there. The developer is.
Pam?
my concern is if I'm coming off of Trotting Park and I happen to go a little bit to the right, unless there's some barrier in between the beginning of those two roads that are parallel and contiguous to each other, and somebody happens to go onto the wrong road and then tries somehow to cut through, there is no way for them to do it. So they have to somehow turn around and go back out. But by the time they realize where they are, they may be all the way down to the end. I mean, it just seems unsafe to me.
Yes, I agree, Pam. You're cutting across one road to get to the other,
Right.
directly across it.
It's unless, as I said, they had some sort of a barrier between the two, which could be dangerous in its own right. I can see where
You'd have to have like 4 lanes with an island
Right.
between them.
right. And I'm not sure there's enough width there. But my concern is I'm coming down and I take a right, but I go onto the new road, and I meant to go on to the original Percival Road. And then I realize halfway down that I'm not where I want to be. And I think that's going to be very dangerous.
I got a quick question.
Jim?
The address of these houses that are on this driveway, what is their address?
I don't know.
When the
It
fire
hasn't-
department goes down and they're supposed to have a house number and they're supposed to be on Percival Road, no, we're on a driveway off a different road. So this is going to be a driveway with A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, and the other side will be number 2627 Percival Road. What are
It's
we
going
doing?
to be terrible.
What are we doing?
One of
I
the
don't know.
things that my understanding is that a 40B can be turned down on safety factors. And this is a life or death safety factor, the entrance as it's set up now. So I do believe that that should be added to our ZBA referral.
That in the address situation.
Okay,
Yes.
As far as addresses go, the 911 folks engineering, they have been doing a very good job at updating a lot of confusing addresses, and that issue will certainly be addressed before this gets out of permitting about what the addresses of those new units will be. But the conflicting turning motions remains an issue, I think.
Charlotte?
trying to study this drawing and see if there's some solution to getting the yellow road to come to the edge of what appears to be the property line so that the yellow and blue roads merge. And I'm wondering why the developer or the company trying to develop this hasn't tried to work that out with I think there were only 5 owners along that road, right? Would there be
Yeah.
some, well, let me put this differently, Pat. It seems to be that our comments to the ZBA pushed people to now come up with this solution for the road, thinking it would answer our problems. It makes a wider road with a better entrance onto Trotting Park. But it has created, in doing that, they've created this anomalous situation of a double road separated by a very narrow and irregular barrier. And I have no doubt that the neighbors will immediately, down at the end of the road, cross over and go along the Blue Road to get out onto Sandwich Road, is what's going to happen. So why couldn't that be worked out now?
Should be.
It should be, and bring the yellow road to exactly to the property line. Why did they put it in like that?
But it's not our job to solve it. It's our job just to point these things out.
Right.
Well, I think we should point out that there's a better solution and that we regret that our comments have forced them into making this really inappropriate solution.
Yeah, we're telling them that it's it's inappropriate right now, and they need to come up with a better way, but we can't tell them what the better way might be. That's up for them to decide.
Plus, Charlotte, I'm not buying into this, that we created this situation. We did not. Because the developer wanted to widen Percival Road, pave it. But what happened is a lot of Percival Road was on not his property, but the property of the people on the other side of Percival Road.
But my point, Pat, isn't about who to blame. It really isn't. It's about looking at this and saying, this is really a very unlivable thing that we're confronted with on this plan.
Yeah.
And would they please rethink it? And the reason we think it's unlivable is because of the 2 roads beside one another, separated by such a narrow thing, one in good condition, probably the new one in poor condition. Couldn't they come up with something better?
Right.
And I think that's our comment, that the entranceway is
Better.
odd, perhaps hazardous, and creates issues for navigation for people entering the site. I think leaving the site, the people who live in the 40B are probably not going to drive on Percival. When they get to Trotting Park Road, they're out of the woods per se. They're going to drive either north or south on Trotting Park Road. The folks who are going to be on Percival are going to remain on Percival. So I don't see many instances where folks who are going to live in the 40B are going to drive all the way down Percival Road, unless they're heading for the Cape Verdean Club and they don't want to go, on the main road.
No, it will be guests of the people going to 40B. People who don't live there, don't learn, and aren't familiar with it, and make a mistake. But the people who are living there all the time have an unsightly situation that they need not have. It could be fixed now.
And part of the problem that the property owner has is that their property comes to a point, like an arrow, right at Trotting Park Road.
Yep.
So they're using half of the right of way that they would be able to claim as a private right of way, that they would have access or ownership of half that right of way to make that roadway improvement where it is. Because if I bring up once more time on the GIS, just to show you, that is right at this point right here where their property ends at. So it ends at a point, they don't even have a flat spot, which is why that road has been pushed more onto Percival Road than on their property.
Yeah.
But you can imagine those where it merges, and then somebody wants to take a left. So you could have 2 cars, one from Percival and one from the new development, coming out at the same point, trying to make a left turn. which could be horribly hazardous.
Well, I just find it kind of amusing that we would even allow two roads to converge like that when you look at the Habitat Restore and Jack and the Beanstalk, where they made such a big issue about the driveways. The
Across
distance
from each
between the
other.
Driveways.
Right.
Right.
Jim?
Just imagine what the navigation systems are gonna do with
Oh,
cars
my
trying
God.
to find their way in this neighborhood.
Oh, and they're coming to a very unsafe corner because
Mhm.
the exit onto Trotting Park is right at
This
the
becomes
edge of
the
a curve.
Fagawi.
Yeah, John?
Yeah,
According to what the testimony was with the ZBA, most of Percival Road at the entrance to Trotting Park Road is on this applicant's property.
Is what?
Is on this applicant's property. Percival Road is crosses into his property at the intersection of Trotting Park Road. In other words, the road that you see right now that exists there is not it's not in the right place. It's across this person's property. If you read the testimony with the zoning board of appeals.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're going to be driving onto his road to exit and to enter. They're entering and exiting on his property right now. And he's going to improve that with pavement. That's what their testimony says.
Well, Percival would have to move over.
That's right.
Well, maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't. I don't know.
But that's not, we can't make that decision. So what I need to ask the board is, do you want to reiterate what we had on our last referral to the ZBA and add in the newly created problem of essentially merging two roads?
Onto a very dangerous road.
You know, use
Yes.
Tom's wording on that one. Paul?
Concerning motions.
I think we have to do that. I think we should take the previous letter and add some of the comments from tonight and put those in. Remember, one's a driveway and one's a roadway. Facilities, one does not. It is very confusing. It is changing that area. Understand John's concern about 40B and the support of that, but that's a slightly different issue than what we're talking about here. I think what they're trying to do here is going to destroy the entire area.
Okay.
And
So
if
may
it's
I
a
have-
driveway, if it's only a driveway, how does that affect lighting?
Don't know.
on
Pam?
the road?
He's proposed lighting along the whole way.
But they're not even sure yet, John, so we can't even comment on that at this point. That's up to the ZBA, whether it was going to be solar lighting or what. There's a lot that's still up in the air that has not been said to the ZBA at this point. So they're still waiting for answers. So Pam, did you want to say something? You're on mute, Pam.
I muted it because I had nothing to say. It was just my hand that you
Oh,
saw.
okay, just your hand waving around. All right. So can I please have a motion? And I know John abstained last time or you voted negatively, didn't you, John? Okay. So may I please have a motion for reiterating our original referral to the ZBA and adding in comments from tonight, particularly in regard to the safety issues of the two roads merging.
So move.
Said that.
Okay.
Pardon?
I thought I made that motion.
I didn't hear a motion, Paul, no. So it's been moved and Paul seconded, okay. May I see hands all in favor? Okay, 6, and John, you're opposed, correct?
I
Okay,
gotta go on record. This is the first time we haven't been unanimous in about 20 votes.
so it's
For
been a long
very, very,
time,
many
no.
meetings.
No, because John voted against this to begin with.
Well, it was a while ago, but in the last
Yeah.
10 meetings, it's almost too good to be true to think we agree with everything.
Okay, so, Tom, when did the ZBA need this decision by?
Thursday.
Thank
Thursday.
you, Paul. The 8th was
Thursday
they
this
were
week.
back to the ZBA, correct?
Okay, so we won't get a chance to review it. It'll essentially be what we said tonight and it'll go.
So I asked Michaela to draft that letter and suggested that if the chair looked at it prior to,
Okay,
get it out the door, because tomorrow is Wednesday,
Right.
and Michaela will be here tomorrow, but she won't be here Thursday, so she'll be putting that decision together, or that. letter.
okay, great. Thank you. Okay, Charlotte?
And I realize we've made our decision and this won't change that, but I do want to ask a question about process. We didn't approve anything. We're just making a comment on a proposed 40B. We have no real authority to do
That's
anything else.
correct.
However, is there no room in the process of something coming to us for us to look at it and make our comment, for us to comment on the need to improve that so that the living situation for the people who will eventually occupy those houses will be better, and that the people on Percival Road will not have that road ruined for them in this way. There should be somewhere in the process for some back and forth with the developer, either by the zoning board or by the zoning board and us, or by a subcommittee of the two, to get an improved plan going forward. We shouldn't let the rules be such barriers to having some reasonable conversation.
I know what you're saying. I do not know whether they've tried to have a reasonable conversation or not at this point. It's nothing that we can compel. It could be that the homeowners on Percival just don't want to see this. And so they're not going to be reasonable about accommodating. I can't speak for
I
them.
don't know that the homeowners have even seen this plan for the completely new road. Have they seen it? Have the abutters had a new chance to comment?
Yes,
know.
the abutters have hired counsel to represent them who have been at the ZBA meetings.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear it.
Me too.
Okay. Okay, Jim came upon something. Our old accessory apartment bylaw versus our new accessory apartment bylaw and the requirements. And I'm going to let you explain it, Jim.
Permission to share a screen?
Sure.
Oh, it's not showing up as well. Sorry, it's not, I don't know why it isn't showing up as well, but the old bylaw, both the primary and accessory rentals are deed restricted to 80% of the county average income. And the ADU is capped at 30% of the primary structure. And I think it's 800 square feet. I'm not sure. I didn't have time to do the research. And the other thing, it's a special permit from the ZBA that could lapse if it's abandoned, which is no use for 3 years. The new bylaw has no deed restriction on income. It's a by right use with the site plan review by the planning board. The ADU size is capped at 800 or 40% of the primary. And we require that they go get everything updated to the current building codes. Where this comes into situation is we have a lot of family, or what do they call it, in-law suites or in-law apartments are in town that don't really require anybody's approval, but sometimes people call them accessory apartments, and that's a really big problem. These older units are now being marketed as accessory units, and no one, including our planning department or the ZBA, was even aware that there was a deed restriction on the old ones. It kind of has been forgotten, but it's still there. And it's just a nightmare. And what I'm suggesting is somebody, probably the ZBA, because they were all done as special permits by them, need to put together the list going back to, what was we talking?
1989 was when the first.
1989. We have a big gap between 2003 and 89 that we have no list of them, except they do show up on our GIS map, but I went to Bob Shea and he says he doesn't have a list. But they do, it's funny, they do show up on the map. But so there's got to be some records there that we can find out who all these old ones are and send them a letter and say, you really need to come update these things. Because what's happened is that no one really recognizes the difference. And then when they're being sold, what I was experiencing was permitted in 93. The house was sold twice. And everyone thought, oh, it's just an accessory apartment. And no one knew anything about the deed restriction. It's just that information's been lost and it's not being tracked. And it's sooner or later, it's going to cause a real mess.
So the question is, does the planning board want to do anything about this? By putting in the new accessory apartment bylaw, we created, I do not know how many pre-existing non-conforming units. And this is always a problem when we put in new bylaws, but nobody is looking at those pre-existing non-conforming. Nobody's paying attention to them. So does the planning board wish to take any kind of action on this, like sending letters to all of those people? Because I think the Messers were the first ones who came in under the new bylaw. So anything that existed previous to that was under the old bylaw, which has its own requirements that probably they're being sold under as if they were under the new bylaw. Is it our problem? Do we need to do anything about it? Who needs to enforce these things? It's always a matter of enforcement. And what is the feeling of the board? Tom?
So unrelated to this discussion, we got a request from our zoning enforcement officer, Jonathan Dickinson, for a list of all the accessory housing units that had been approved. Because in our bylaw, it says under monitoring, an affidavit shall be submitted annually to the building commissioner, signed by the property owner, attesting that yada, yada, yada. It actually doesn't say yada, yada, yada. And so Jonathan sent out, and they're copied the planning board, 41 letters to people who own accessory housing units. It says, I'm contacting you. As of this date, the building department does not have a current signed affidavit on file. And according with the requirements of the bylaw, you have to do so on an annual basis. So the building commissioner and the zoning enforcement officer have actually taken this on to find out what's the sitch. I'm sorry, I'm using a lot of slang tonight. Right the ship here before you finish tonight. To assess, what is actually going on in the field. So with this, we'll see what kind of reply that Jonathan gets back on this request. But oftentimes is the case, we make requirements and then there's a hard it's difficult to follow up on them, or there's a lack of following up on them. So I credit the building commissioner's office for taking the initiative to ask those questions. Jonathan's been on the job maybe less than a year, and he really has been doing a great job down there at taking care of business in a very busy office. So while we've got these sort of competing issues where, and we saw this on Andy's Lane, at 11 Andy's Lane, they had an accessory apartment under the old bylaw that required that 80% median income. And so they essentially created a new bylaw or a new unit under our bylaw. But we're going to have those out there. And what do we do about bringing those things out of the cold? Well, I think it would probably be in those people's best interests to go ahead and apply again to be eligible under the new bylaw. But that's not really a discussion we've had other than tonight. But we're at least aware of the situation, and the building commissioner's office is looking into it.
Well, the reason to apply under the new bylaw, principally as I see it, is that there are deed restrictions. You couldn't sell your house or the ADU except with the continuation of it as deed restricted. And one of the reasons that we felt that we brought in the new bylaw is that we were not getting enough applications for ADUs because nobody wanted to be deed restricted. They wanted to be able to sell their house without having that deed restriction, that it always had to be that. Bob.
Doesn't the tax assessor have records of people who have in-law apartments and now ADUs? And I said this from the very beginning, that this affidavit should go out with the tax bill. I mean, I get Jiffy Lube certificates from the state when you register a vehicle. I mean, I don't see why we couldn't send affidavits to people who have these units.
Well, maybe that's a question that Tom needs to pose to the new building inspector, since he is taking the initiative to do this. 43 letters going out. I don't know how far back in time that goes, but we know we would have units going back to when the bylaw came into being in 1989, one would suspect. Charlotte?
I think we've done as much as we need to about this. This really is a legal matter. Our own legal office ought to maybe make a finding on it, but the building inspector has taken it on and we don't need to.
So the bylaw says an affidavit shall be submitted annually. I suppose someone could send out an affidavit to someone to sign, but the onus is on the property owner, much like it will be on 40 Shore Street, to ensure that that unit is occupied by someone who's income eligible for the affordable unit and is not rented as a market rate unit. So those folks, the onus is on them as a requirement of their permit to submit this annually. And if the property sells and changes hands, folks might not be aware of that, or maybe until they get a letter from the building commissioner and they take a look at that.
Well, also the question is, which bylaw are they under? That's where the question comes up. Are they under the old bylaw? Since the list I've seen goes back to 2003, so there's quite a gap between 1989 and 2003, and that's still the older bylaw.
Yeah, I know they got addresses from both the planning board and the zoning board of appeals for the building commissioner.
So that question, Tom, could be posed to the building inspector, because there may be more out there that he's not letting know. Jim?
I think, I'm not sure, but I believe the affidavit requirement is only something that's in the new bylaw, not in the old. And the old bylaw had to be recorded deed restriction. And I think I found, at least in one case, but I think it's probably more, that they never recorded it.
Right.
It's a mess.
Yeah, but if he sent out 43 letters, we've not had 43 ADUs built since our new bylaw.
No, but that list I think I had from Cerie Boudreau was probably around 43. I think it only went back to, was it 2003? And it's the gap between, where you mentioned the date before, 89 and 2003, that I couldn't find anyone in town hall that knows what that is.
So the building inspector can research it a bit.
But they do show up on the GIS map as little red houses.
Yeah. Charlotte?
It's interesting, but not our responsibility.
Okay.
Okay, so I think
Sleeping dog.
I think we've got a path forward. Tom is going to notify the building department that
Let them deal with it.
Yeah, and let them deal with it. Okay, because it is their responsibility. Okay. Tom, the Davis Straits update, you sent something through to us, and would you like to speak to that? You're on mute, Tom.
While I was on mute, I was asking, is it okay to share my screen, Madam Chair? I hope the answer was yes.
What if I said no?
I can fix that. So here on the screen, you see the Davis Straits, davis-straits.com website. So in the update, we had mentioned that on March 29th, Michaela and I met with Jeremy Lake of Union Studio and Jeff Davis of Horsley Witten on the Davis Straits project. We had have our survey up. We've had our website up since the first of the year, and responses to the survey have been sort of plateauing. So since that time, we suggested, in addition to the emails that I had sent out to folks, to town meeting members, and the various plugs I've made at meetings I've been at, that we put together a postcard, and we send that postcard out to everybody who is a property owner in the Davis Straits, and everybody is a town meeting member, letting them know that our survey, which is on the website, is available for them to take. But because not everybody likes working on the computer, the postcard says that you don't have to go onto the computer. You can call us. You can come in and pick up a survey, and fill it out, or you can call us and we'll mail one to you. The survey responses are going to close at the end of April. So anybody who would like to make comment on the Davis Straits survey, whether through SurveyMonkey or a hard copy, April 30th is when we're closing the books on those comments. At that point, we'll have the preliminary information that we would have based on the public input in order to start drafting some portions of the bylaw. Outside of COVID, we'd be having, meetings in rooms and having stickers and maps and things like that, but we're sort of hamstrung because of the situation we've been over the past year. So at this point, we are wrapping up this portion of the public comment, but not wrapping up all public comment. We're asking people to fill out the surveys, and then talking with Jeremy and Jeff, they will start drafting some things based on the comments that we've gotten back and bring those to the board with the target date of having that done for June. So we expect in June 2021 that we will have our next public meeting about Davis Straits with some of the preliminary language and some of the preliminary drawings and exhibits from form-based code. So that's what's going on the Davis Straits side of things as far as moving the ball goes there. Last week or so, I guess end of March, I had a chat with John Drewley in the multifamily bylaw subcommittee was meeting that day. So I invited myself to come to their meeting because I frankly very sad at the fact that I haven't had time to really spend much time with this group and the work that they're doing. And since then, I've had a couple follow-ups from Eric Turkington that I haven't had a chance to read yet. But one of the things that we talked about at the multifamily meeting was that the idea that I had always maintained that we would have a multifamily bylaw that would be applicable across town with the exception of the Davis Straits area. That we wouldn't have a competing bylaw of the Davis Straits and some multifamily bylaw. In fact, in the joint meeting we had with the selectmen, we had talked about, do we want the Davis Straits to be an overlay district or do we want it to be new zoning? And I think the consensus at that point was we really wanted it to be new zoning so we didn't have someone who decided to opt for form-based code and the person next door decided to build another big box next to it. So I want to make sure that I'm understanding that we're on the same page, that we're looking at Davis Straits as an area that's 77 acre plus or minus study area as specific to form-based code and not necessarily having form-based code and a future multifamily bylaw on the same parcels. And so that's where we're at this point. From talking to the folks at Union Studio, they seem to concur that it would be best to have these as two separate zonings for the area. And then we also had a brief discussion about the joint working group, and I'll get back to that in a minute, but I do want to kind of drill down on my understanding is Davis Straits going to be Davis Straits form-based code, or are we looking at trying two different zonings covering the same area?
Charlotte?
I don't know when you met with that subcommittee. I'm on the subcommittee and I wasn't at that meeting. So that's interesting, but I'd like to comment on what you said. The subcommittee did meet yesterday, Jim and John and I, and it's true, there are two trains coming down the track. One is the multifamily and the other is Davis Straits. But the multifamily train is further ahead on the track and is likely to get there first. It's much closer to coming before town meeting. And it would be, if it is as it's being drafted now, it would be an overlay district on the 1B1 area and all the other B2 areas. And it would be a mixed residential and commercial overlay district. And that would be the zoning until on the Davis Straits section, something else takes place. So if they were going to happen simultaneously, I would agree with you, there shouldn't be two, but they won't happen simultaneously. It's very unlikely. So I think our little subcommittee will propose that it goes forward as an overlay district on its own, and it would include Davis Straits, so that that would be the zoning for, while we wait for form-based. Also, I want to point out the maybe several weeks ago, maybe more than a month ago, we thought we had a more appropriate name for it, that we would call it mixed residential and commercial overlay district for the business zones, because that really is what it is. It's not just multifamily.
Well, I think the schedule right now is November 2021 is our next town meeting. And that's when we're proposing to bring recodification and form-based code and likely multifamily to the same town meeting in November.
Well, yes, Tom, that's the schedule, but there's no form-based zoning to even look at now. And here it is April. So your guess, of course, is much more informed than mine, but it seems unlikely to me that we're going to actually get to form-based zoning in November. I would like to hear from Jim and John on that.
I couldn't have said it better, Charlotte.
Thank you.
I agree, and I think there was no misunderstanding, Tom, at that meeting, what we were proposing. And I don't understand why the multifamily can't be included into form-based code. I mean, form-based code is just a design of the structures. It doesn't tell you what's going to be in the structures. I'm confused by that. I don't understand why it's an issue.
Well, I think if we're looking at creating, and this has been, the work that started much before I got here with the Cape Cod Commission and Visual Preference Survey to get us to this point. And I just don't want this to be to create some confusion as to what we're doing in this district. I like I said, I have always been operating under the assumption that the Davis Straits was going to be the form-based code, and the multifamily we've been talking about is going to be on those other zoning districts that are outside of the Davis Straits.
But what did you see being put into these form-based code buildings? What have we always talked about? Well, retail on the first floor and apartments on the second floor. Isn't that what we've discussed every time?
Well, and the issue for form-based code is it's not about the use, it's about the form. There are obviously those uses that you would say are prohibited in this district. But form-based code is more about the form and the use. As we've talked about, you get a 3,000 square foot building. Does the applicant want to put 10 units in that, or do they want to put 3 units in that? It gets back to the form-based code. So once again, I just want to make sure I'm clear on what I thought we were doing is creating a zoning district for the Davis Straits. And a second district that was an overlay for every other part of town.
But that is not what we're doing. That's not what we're doing. The mixed commercial and residential overlay district will become part of the Davis Straits form-based code. It's not different from it. It's an integral part of it.
You know what I'd like to suggest is that all of you take a chance, give yourself a chance to look at that which Tom forwarded through to us at some point this afternoon from Union Studios, a project that they did towards the outskirts of Ann Arbor. And see what you think about that. It's quite interesting. It was a 6-year process. And it really brings into focus what we're trying to achieve at the plaza, I believe, and the environs around there. And part of that is the multifamily. There's a lot of multifamily in that, integrated with businesses. Just see what you think about that. And I don't know, Tom is pointing out that he does not want to see the concept of form-based confused if we put an overlay district in there, that at some point when we're ready to to do the form-based, this is what I'm understanding. We want it to incorporate the multifamily with business. That's been our concept all along. So how that's achieved, I don't know.
Well, we'll know more about that in June as we move forward with the drafts that they'll be putting together. But
Mhm.
the take-home point for tonight is if you folks want to comment on the survey, please do. Because after April 30th, we will essentially stop taking comments and work off the information that we've got on developing the bylaw. The other thing that we had talked about during the course of the meeting was the Davis Straits Joint Working Group that Pat had suggested at our joint meeting with the selectmen, and how we might put something together for that. So the folks at Union Studios said they saw some value in something like that for the group to be reviewing drafts and looking at those things prior to them coming out publicly. We are looking at putting together actually what the charge of that committee would be. And so hopefully in May, we'll have sort of that sort of charge put together for what that working group might be doing. The membership that's been talked about before were 2 members of the select board, 2 members of the planning board, and a member of the development community as that 5-person group.
But that's still up in the air. No decisions have been made on that at this point.
No, and typically people are looking at to me to say, well, what would the charge of that group be? Working with our consultants to make sure that what we're putting together is helpful to the process and not sort of an extra step to go along to move this thing along, because we're trying to be we're trying to move the ball on this and get it to where it's supposed to be at.
The other thing that when I listened to that presentation from Union Studio this afternoon, I thought this is something that should be forwarded to the select board so that they understand what we are about. What we've been looking at with Union Studio for a possibility at the plaza area. And I say plaza area because it's not just the plaza. And they will better understand why it's really necessary for the administration, heads of town government to get on board with it to make it happen.
And I'm happy to forward that to Julian. But I got the impression from our January joint meeting that there was a lot of optimism and a lot of support from the select board for this initiative.
Absolutely. I'm not saying there isn't, Tom, but it will give them a better idea of the fullness of what we're trying to accomplish. Paul?
I'd just like to emphasize what Tom just said. If you recall the minutes that we approved earlier today of the joint meeting, there was a comment in there by the chairman of the select board about her enthusiasm about moving forward, and she wanted that committee to be established by the end of March.
Right.
So there was a lot of emphasis on moving this thing forward.
Right.
And I'd like to encourage that to move as we discussed.
Yeah. Bob?
Can I just get back to the multifamily and the Davis Straits thing again? We're looking at a multifamily overlay in certain areas of town, correct?
Yes.
And we're looking for a direct zone for the Davis Straits study area, correct?
That's what we've always thought, yes.
We couldn't do both of them at the same time and treat Davis Straits sort of the way we treat watershed overlay districts. You know, if you're building in a coastal pond overlay district, there are certain things you have to comport to in order to do that. So if we had a form-based code district over the Davis Straits reset area, if you're building a multifamily unit or that's going to have mixed use or whatever, it would have to conform to form-based code. Is that not possible to do it that way?
That's the point that Charlotte and John and Jim were making.
Yeah.
They could be together. John?
One of the things that I really think is important for Davis Straits to be successful, form-based code or any kind of code, is the acceptance and the use of this proposed bylaw that we're going to be showing to you very shortly. It will allow to have the residential use by right and not just the commercial uses, which is what is there right now. So it's either or right now. So if we can get this approved through the board and through town meeting. It's going to enhance and it'll give the incentive to the property owners to change what's there into something much better.
Mhm.
But you'll know that when you see it. And then we'll discuss it as a board, obviously.
Sure. Thank you. Okay, let's see. Update on assistant town planner position, Tom.
All righty. Let me get to my calendar here. So as I pointed out, we are now in our third attempt to hire an assistant town planner. We have interviews scheduled for this third round beginning April 14th. It has been essentially since April 13th, 2021, since there was an assistant town planner working in the office. So it's been a while, and we've been operating at this current level for about a year now, I guess exactly a year now. So we've advertised the position. We have as promptly as we can, and we have a third round of applicants, and we hope that there is a qualified applicant there who will accept the position. Over the past two rounds, we've offered the position to someone who turned it down. The second round, we offered the position to one person who turned it down and offered it to a second person in that same round who turned it down. So we are optimistic that the third time is the charm, and we will have a qualified candidate in this pool, and they will offer them the position and they will take it. We will know more when we start interviewing folks on April 14th. Presently, the assistant town planner position is still posted, so other people could apply if they wanted. There are also 12 permanent positions advertised on the site, 9 seasonal and 1 temporary site. So while this has lapsed, while this has lapsed for some time, there are a number of positions being sought in the town, and I certainly hope that ours is filled.
John?
Tom, is there a common theme for people turning down the opportunity to be the assistant town planner?
I don't know, because Denise Coleman, our HR director, has had that conversation with those folks. I have not.
It'd be interesting to find out. I don't know if the town's not offering enough money. I don't know if the housing problem here is an issue. It'd be nice to know why. And maybe it's a different reason for each person, each applicant, but there is a common theme. It would be nice to know what that is.
Mm-hmm.
I think most people assume it's me. I don't want to work with that guy.
Yeah, I was going to say it's this board. People just don't like it.
They like the board.
I did want to make one other comment about the bylaw we've been working on. I don't want to go back too far, but I just want to say that to get to where we're at, we're very close. Tom has been very helpful. It's very complex. The legal system there's a lot to this, and he's been very, very helpful getting to the point where we're at right now.
Well, and I think we'd be further along if we were fully staffed, and I don't need to say that, but that's just the reality of the circumstance.
Paul? Paul, did you want to say something?
No, I'm sleeping.
Oh, all right. I won't wake you up.
No, I was just thinking, that's all.
Okay. Moving on, does anybody have any announcements to make? Tom?
There are precinct meetings. April 7th for precinct 8 and 9, and April 8th for precincts 5 and 6. I've been to a couple of them. I don't know that I'm going to be available fully to be at the one on Wednesday, and I know that I had sent this information out to folks, and I didn't know if any of you folks were going to be at either the April 7th or April 8th precinct meetings.
Is anybody planning to?
I'm going to precinct 5. I'm a town meeting member for precinct 5.
So that's on the 8th.
Yeah.
Paul?
Yeah, you attended the precinct meetings for 1, 2, and 3. And there was one question on one of the articles proposed by the planning board. Can you summarize that for the benefit of the future town precinct meetings?
That was about what are those regulations that are being waived under the site plan review, that question that Peter Clark had.
Yes.
So with that in mind, the what's being waived, but the potential to be waived are the requirements, the remainder of the requirements in the bylaw. The email that I sent out to town meeting members on Monday included in the packet a markup of the bylaw, the existing site plan bylaw that shows the changes that are being made. Ken Foreman had made this suggestion a while ago, when you're making a change to the bylaw, if you could show the entire bylaw in context. So we took 240-192, which is site plan, and superimposed those changes to the bylaw in that to give folks a better understanding of what that is. We also did similarly for the changes to the solar siting, except because the solar bylaw is 9 pages long, I only put the section in that the applicants were looking to amend. We also included the slides from the the hearings from the board had, as well as the links to those meetings. So any town meeting member who gets that email can click on those links. But the changes to the site plan were to allow for more opportunities for the board to review those, and for the board to be able to waive some of those requirements if deemed minor in scope, and defer those to the staff, to the town planner.
Okay.
Hope that answers your question, Paul.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Announcements? Okay. General correspondence. Jim sent something to the paper. It was published in there, but he wanted it to be read at tonight's meeting because it does give some good information. So I hereby read it. I was a director of the Falmouth Economic Development and Industrial Corporation, EDIC, for many years, and I worked each day to ensure that our community be afforded every possible economic opportunity. In my last year at the agency, I finalized negotiations on an extremely valuable project that I think everyone should know about. We transformed the old landfill on Thomas B. Landers Road into a large-scale solar farm designed to provide discount green energy to Falmouth families in need. Our partner in this project, Citizens Energy Corporation, was founded by Joseph P. Kennedy II to make life's basic needs more affordable through creative energy ventures. Their innovative program, Joe for Sun, is already saving some local households $300 every year on their energy bills. In the past year, our residents have faced unprecedented need, and I am very proud of how hard the EDIC has worked to address the financial hardships brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic. Not only do the hardworking folks there seek out opportunities for the town government and hard-hit businesses, but also for Falmouth families. The Joe for Sun program puts money back into the pockets of our residents while making the green energy revolution accessible for all. I strongly urge anyone who needs a hand to apply today at www.citizensenergy.com/Joe for Sun-Falmouth, or call 855, and Joe for Sun is JOE-4-SUN. So that I thought was important information for people to hear in case they need help with their energy bills. Then the only other, piece of correspondence is something again from Deb Packard regarding Bad Martha's Brewery and their complaints out there, and how Bad Martha seems to be pushing the envelope every chance they get. And they are concerned, I'm not going to read the whole 2 pages on this, that they are concerned that they're already advertising their flea market, and that they will keep that mowed land open with all the picnic tables on there that they were never given permission to use. They were not complaining about it because of the COVID emergency. They recognized that it might be difficult for people to stay in business. So that's a summation of their letter. They sent it to the Board of Selectmen as well, and I believe the Board of Selectmen would be the appropriate agency to act on it. We already told them that they have to go to the people who are allowing this or whoever has to crack down on them if cracking down needs to be done. So that's a summary of the letter. You all got that in your packets too, that you could see. Future agenda, let's see. Future agenda item. I don't know, we seem to have them all lined up. Charlotte?
Have you got what we've been calling multifamily, but is actually mixed residential and commercial overlay district on the agenda for the next meeting on the 27th?
I don't know if you're going to be ready, because we decided we weren't going to put it on again until you all were ready to put it on, that it is in final form. So you would have to notify, we need to know like by Wednesday of the week before the meeting to put it on the agenda. So one of the three of you needs to have it ready to be submitted, that we can actually discuss it, that we can have it in hand, okay?
April 22nd birthday is the deadline for the 27th agenda.
Okay. So if you have it ready, yes, it will go on the agenda.
Thank you.
Happy to have it on, okay? Is there anything else that anybody wants to see on a future agenda? Okay, so the next meetings, we have the April 12th annual spring 2021 town meeting, at which it has not been voted to only have the financial. What is it, through 15 or 16, the article numbers, and then defer the rest until a June special meeting. That will be determined at that point, and then it becomes official. So at this point, the whole agenda is on that meeting, or the whole warrant is on that meeting. Our next meeting is April 27th. Okay,
Okay,
is everybody ready to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
yes. Second,
Bye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Night,
thank
everyone.
you, Pat.